All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Chef Triathlete Podcast. Today, I want to talk about something I think is a struggle for everyone. So today's topic is going to be the season of growth, why you can't chase every goal at once, right? You just can't do everything all at the same time. And we're going to kind of break this down today and talk about that. You know, it goes back to, cliche statements like, you can't always have your cake and eat it too, or you can have everything you want, just not all at once, right? So let's talk about that today. So for me, let's talk about me. For the past few weeks, I've been traveling for work, training for Leadville 100, coaching some athletes, growing some of my side businesses, producing content, and trying to be the best husband and father that I can be. And to be honest, at times you sometimes feel like you're just not giving enough, right? So that's when you have to realize what is important. What's important to you at this time? What are the most important priorities, and where do you have to focus your attention most, right? Because you just can't focus your attention evenly everywhere, and you're not supposed to. You're not supposed to do that. There's certain times for certain things in certain phases of life. So that's what we're going to break down today. Success isn't about doing everything every day. It's about knowing what season that you're in. Every goal has a season. We all have different seasons and different phases of life where some of our goals are going to be aligned and prioritized in front of other goals. And with that, that's where we break down kind of like the percentages of how we're going to focus. So everyone has a season in life where career is front and foremost. Career is always important, but there's times in your life where you might be trying to grow your career to get it to a certain point. You might just be starting out a new career. So when you're starting out a new career, obviously that's going to take a lot of focus as you settle into that career. You're learning, you're training, you're trying to grow. That's a season on its own. That's a season that never really stops, but definitely has more focuses certain times than others. Then you have your family season. This is going to be, for most of us, our biggest season that we struggle to find the most balance for. The family season is fast and furious when it first starts out. I wouldn't say that it slows down, it just changes. And I can say that because I am in a season of my family where my children are older. Almost all of them are adults, so I've gone through the different family seasons, and believe me, I haven't been perfect in those seasons, but that is a huge season that always requires focus and effort amongst everything else. So that's always going to be in the background. Then for me, and maybe for some others that have done sports or competed, you have your training seasons. Training seasons involve a huge commitment, right? We talked about this in the past. We talked about if you're training for a marathon, if you're training for an Ironman, if you're training for a huge cycling event, or you're training for a 100-mile trail race, whatever that is, that requires a certain amount of commitment. So in that season, that needs to be prioritized along with the support of people around you, right? Because that's very important as well. Health has its seasons. Now, what I mean by health has its seasons is that, health is always in the background, and health is always something that you think about. But I can say, once again, from experience, when you're focusing heavy on your family season, say you have multiple children, your children are young, at that same time, you might be, most likely, you might be in that career season as well. The health season kind of takes a backseat a bit. So once you get through those seasons, it might be time to really start prioritizing the health seasons. So for a lot of people, you see people really start to prioritize their health season in their mid to late 30s and especially in their 40s because they've been through a lot of those other seasons. So now they have time to really focus on them and really focus on your health. So that could be a health season. And people that own businesses, business seasons happen, right? You decided you want to start your own business. You made that commitment. That season's going to last for a very long time. and continue. But until you have that established business, that's going to take more focus than some of the other goals or some of these other buckets that we spoke about. So none of this means you have to quit any of these goals. You simply just have to adjust your priority in period of time. So you really have to break it down. We talk about balance and balancing your life and balancing, your work, home life, or your quality of life, whatever that may be. Balance doesn't always mean equal balance, right? I mean, it doesn't mean giving everything 20%, because if you give everything 20%, how are you going to excel or do exactly what you need to be doing in any of these goals or any of those buckets, right? What happens if you only give your family 20% all the time? You're not being the provider or the parent or whatever it may be, whatever your responsibility in that family is, if you're only giving 20% all the time. And same goes for all these: career, training, health, whatever it is. 20% is not enough to get through anything. In this percentage is like a continuous fluctuation depending on what season you're in. So we talked about family early on. You're just building your family. So sometimes when you're just building your family, it's going to look like 70% family, maybe 20% work. Maybe you're just in a position at work where you obviously need to do well at that position that you're in, but maybe it's not a time to grow in your career. Maybe it's not a time to try to do things to move up in a role, because you need to give so much focus with your family. Maybe you have young ones, you have daycare, you have babies, whatever it is. So that work percentage is going to go down. And a lot of times during this, you don't have time for that health or training segment, so that really goes down to like, say, 10%. I'm going to tell you a quote or a little snippet from one of my most favorite speakers and authors, Brene Brown. She talks about this in marriage all the time, right? Marriage is, it's a partnership, right? And they always say that you should give 100% in your marriage, which is true to an extent. But when you think about marriage, you can think about these buckets because it's relatable as well. You're not always going to be at 100%, right? So that's why you have a partner. So if you're having struggles, you have a lot of things going on, your partner might be at 30%. So at that time and stage, you need to give that extra, you need to be at 70%. So both you guys are at 100%, right? And that fluctuates throughout seasons and throughout time of life. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're thinking about your priorities and where they're aligned at what phase of life that you're in. Other times, shift focus, depending on race preparation, building a business, supporting one you love. Just remember, balance isn't equal. Balance is intentional. Now, we talked about goals in the past, and we talked about being intentional about setting your goals. So being intentional about setting your goals is realizing what season or what phase you're in, and is that goal really aligned where it should be? Now, you might be in the career season. You are full force, driving full speed ahead. You want this. You want your manager role. A manager role just opened up. It's a huge opportunity for you. You know you can get there. You have a plan. That's your sole focus. That might not be the time to say, hey, I never did an Ironman before. I'm going to sign up and train for an Ironman. Those two goals don't align together. It would be really hard to be full driven on your career as well as train fully committed to an Ironman. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible or not able to be done. Finding that balance to be able to do the two successfully, you might burn yourself out. It might be too much at one time, and you may not be as successful as one as you would at the other, because you may think that you're giving that full commitment to both, but something's going to slide somewhere. And that can be with any of these goals or any of these buckets. This is why you have to find that percentage balance, not the 20% balance, but the percentage balance depending on what phase you're in. It's really important to kind of prioritize, I would say, maybe not monthly, but 2 or 3 times a year, really sit down and think about what you're working on, what are your goals, what phase of life are you in, and what's attainable and what really is important at this time right now, and what can kind of take a back seat until you're through whichever phase that you're in. I'll tell you, for me, like, we'll talk about Leadville and we'll talk about Ironman training. What has Leadville or training for Ironman, what is that teaching me? We're talking about training early mornings or late afternoons, long commitment trainings on the weekends, being able to travel for work, finding time to recover, and then learning that perfection isn't realistic. I say this all the time. I say this to new clients that I speak to. You set a goal, whether it's a weight loss goal, whether it's, say you signed up for a marathon and you have this time goal and you have this training plan, right? You have a set training plan. Whatever goal it is, you have a set plan. And there are going to be times, or there's going to be weeks that you cannot follow that plan to a T. Right? It's just impossible. Something's going to give. You have work travel coming up. Maybe you have conferences you have to go to. Maybe you have family commitments or a vacation. For that short period, that plan is not 100% going to be followed, let's say. So you can't always be perfect, right? The goal isn't perfection. It's to be consistent. And I say this all the time. I say, I have athletes, I have friends, I have clients that they get so caught up in following the plan or following the schedule that, and I've done this myself, believe me, early on, I used to beat myself up and force myself to do things. It's okay if you miss a workout. It's okay if you don't work that plan or that schedule to the T every single week. Now, you want to do the best that you can to follow it, but there's going to be times where you can't. But if you're still completing, say, 80% of your plan consistently, you're going to be better and improved than you were when you just started. That's why I say consistency is far more important and will get you further than perfection. Perfection is almost impossible, very close to impossible. Unless you have no other buckets to focus on, you could focus on perfection, but that's not reality and that's not realistic. You always have something in the background. You always have these other percentages that you have to, focus your time on. So you have to be okay with not working towards perfection and working towards consistency, because if you do that, you will be successful. If you work towards perfection, this is where you're going to burn out. And burnout comes in so many different ways, and burnouts can be really, really bad and really dangerous for you mentally, physically. It can affect your friends and your family. You just do not want to get to the point where you're burnt out for many reasons. Burning out comes from either trying to sprint to the finish or focusing on that perfection. This is why you need to align your priorities. Make sure you're communicating with your family. Make sure you're being present, and give yourself permission to focus on life when it demands it. So what do I mean by that? Giving yourself permission to focus when life demands it. We talked about the buckets. We talked about ways that you could easily burn out. Having two big goals at the same time and trying to reach those goals definitely can cause burnout, and that is not where your focus should be shifted. Your focus should be shifted on an A goal, a B goal, and then some other things underneath that you have to give your attention to in order to be successful and not burn out. And you have to give yourself breaks or recovery, right? If you're training hard, you have to make sure you have recovery built in. If you're working towards a huge promotion at work, you have to make sure you have some work-life balance, that you're not working 24 hours a day. You're going to burn out, right? If you are in the thick of it with a young family at home, you have kids running around like crazy, you feel like life is nonstop, you have to find a way with either you and your partner, or you and your spouse, or you and family members to find time, to find a way to have time for yourself, right? Whether that's early in the morning, takeout once a week, dinner once or twice a month, whatever that looks like, these are the things you need to do to avoid burnout. Because burnout can be so ugly, and burnout will ruin your goals. Because once you get to the point of burnout, it's really hard to bounce back. Perfect examples of burnouts are New Year's resolutions. This is a telltale sign. This is a perfect example of burnout, right? You see a lot of people, New Year's, January, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to eat good. I'm going to do all these things. So they sign up for a gym membership. They start going to the gym 7 days a week. They're eating like a bird every single day, foods that they do not even like to eat. And they're doing all these things, and they continue to do it until the point where they either get injured, they can't sustain the food plan or the diet they put themselves on. They burn themselves out. And what happens after that burnout? You revert back, even sometimes worse, in the space that you were before you started the goal. Think about that. You revert worse than you were before you started the goal when you burn out. And sometimes you don't come out of that burnout. This is why it's so important to avoid burnouts. Burnouts can put you into a depression. They can put you in this negative space that will affect everything around you. So it's really important to pick your priorities, communicate with your family. Make sure your priorities align with your support system. This was a big learning for me throughout the years. I've been doing marathon, triathlon, some other type of races for about 8 years now. And I would say the first 6 of those years, I really was not doing the best I could to pick my priorities and make sure I had full support. I kind of was just doing what I wanted to do on my own, and it has an effect. It has an effect on your friends. It has an effect on your family. It has an effect on your marriage or your partnership, whatever it may be. So you need to make sure that when you're picking your priorities, when you're picking your goals, they are aligned with your support system. And you need to take a look at that balance percentage and make sure that balance percentage is aligned with the rest of your priorities and goals. What I mean by that is that if you're going to be super career driven, or you're signing up for a high commitment race like an Ironman or something along those lines, you need to make sure your support system supports you in a positive way, that they're behind you. But with that being said, you need to make sure that you align your goals, that you are building your goal in a way that is in agreement with your support system. So make sure you're finding time to spend time with your friends. You're not isolating yourself. You know, when you're working towards this career goal or this race goal, that you're not isolating yourself from everyone while you're doing that. This is what you don't want to do. This will cause a negative effect on a lot of things. And to be quite honest, if and when you do reach that goal, it's not going to feel as good, right? It will feel amazing if everyone you had that was supporting you was there. You've kind of had that balance throughout, you know, the road to your goal, and it will make it much easier to set more goals and be able to focus on things if you have things aligned correctly. Like I said, give yourself permission to shift focus when life demands it. And then that's what I'm talking about. You know, make sure you're intentional about not going towards a perfection, but going towards a consistency, and making sure that you're reading the signals around you. You're picking up those signals. So if you're, you know, career, you're driving towards a career, you're working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, maybe getting caught in a cycle, and you're kind of forgetting that you need to pump the brakes a little bit, and you still need to make sure you're paying attention to your surroundings around you. If you can't check yourself and someone self-checks you, don't be defensive against that, because they're seeing something that you're not. That is a cue that a lot of us miss when we get so dialed in and so focused on a goal. We miss those cues and we miss those self-checks and kind of almost ignore them. You don't want to do that, right? Let's kind of recap a little bit here. So every goal has a season. You want to make sure you're aligning those those goals within those seasons correctly. Make sure they're balanced out correctly. Like we said, 20% of every bucket is not balanced. You won't be successful there. You want to make sure your percentages are aligned with your support system, your goal, and your responsibilities. Avoid burnout. Avoid burnout by making sure you're intentional about having goals aligned correctly, not having too big of either one or two goals that you're reaching for at the same time. Make sure you're picking your priorities, making sure you have communication with your support system, you're being present when you should be. These are some questions I want you to ask yourself. What season of life are you currently in? Really sit down and think about that. For a lot of us, it's easy. It's really easy to figure out what season of life that you're in. It's pretty self-explanatory for most. For most that have had families, etc. If you haven't had families, or you don't intend to have children, or you don't have children, I think it's still really easy to kind of figure out what season of life that you're in. A lot of it has to do with age. Not always, but you kind of go through these seasons, right? You may have finished high school, you either went to college, or maybe you didn't go to college. You start some type of career. These are all different phases. That phase, in your 20s could look 10 different ways. A lot of times, that phase in your 20s, you're kind of figuring life out. But by the 30s, I think most people can kind of start to identify what phase that they're in. So identify what phase or what season of life that you're in, and what deserves your full attention at this time. What are you focusing on? Is it health? Is it career? Is it family? Is it training? Whatever it may be, write that down. That's number one, right? And then, what can wait without being abandoned? Because you don't want to abandon any of your commitments, but what can go on the back burner a little bit? What can you give a little less focus to without abandoning it? So start to write down, the number one season that you're in, what you want to give your full attention to, and then kind of prioritize the others behind that. And really be intentional about it. Think about where those focuses should be. I guarantee you this will help you get some clarity as to what you want to do, where you're going, and what your goals are. The whole preface of this episode is I feel like a lot of us get so caught up, whatever phase or season that we're in, we don't prioritize any of this, and then we don't really move forward, and we just go through life day to day, and then 5-10 years from now, you kind of say, what just happened to the last 5-10 years? When you could have prioritized your season, you could have set some goals, and maybe you could have taken that class you wanted to, maybe get that certification you wanted to, or run that race that you wanted to. Nothing drives me crazy more when people say, I can't do that right now, I don't have time. Why is it that you can't do it right now, and why is it that you don't have time? Is it because you're just caught up in your day-to-day and you're caught up in your routines? Or is it really because you are in one of these phases and you literally have no time? I want to say 6, maybe 7 out of 10 of those people have the time. They just do not have their season and their priorities aligned correctly to work towards a goal, and or are so stuck in their day-to-day that they may want to realign, but they can't get to a space where to sit down and be disciplined and work towards those goals, or really identify what phase that they're in and what their priorities are and what they want to focus on. Remember, success isn't about being busy. It isn't about looking like you're the busiest man or woman in the world. If you look at leaders, CEOs, presidents, I always say to myself, when I see a CEO or president of a company, they always look super organized, right? And I was in these shoes. You see it in sales positions all the time. I've been in sales for a good amount of my career now. You see the young salespeople that are flustered. They look like they have 10,000 things going on. They have emails, laptops. They keep checking their phone. And then you see a CEO and a president. They look calm, cool, collected. They look like they're so organized, and it's because that mentality, that alignment, they kind of understand that, right? They understand how to set goals. They understand how to prioritize things, and that's why they got to where they are, because they understood that. Now, not every, it's a lot easier for some than others. So just remember, success isn't being about busy. It's about being intentional. It's about being organized and having those goals aligned. This goes back to the CEO president status right here. People who accomplish extraordinary things aren't necessarily the most talented. They're the ones who keep showing up, adjusting when life changes, and refusing to quit. Let's say that again. The people who accomplish extraordinary things aren't necessarily the most talented. They're the ones that keep showing up, adjust when life changes, and refusing to quit. Continuously working towards those goals, continually adjusting your priorities, continually being consistent. They're the ones who keep showing up as consistency. We talked about that. It's not about being perfect every week. It's about showing up every week. It's about making those changes and continue to move forward. So you could read that statement different ways, but that's how I understand it. I understand it as consistency, adjusting priorities, and continue to move forward. Whether your goal is losing weight, running your first race, building a business, improving your health, whatever it may be, you just have to follow that process. You have to trust the process. This is another fail for a lot of people, especially now, because we all live in the society of instant gratification, right? We want it to happen yesterday, and it doesn't. It doesn't, but it happens faster than you think. I see it a lot. I refer to, new clients and people that I help and, consult with all the time. A lot of times you'll see people set a goal, and a lot of times when you set a goal, you're not going to notice change within that first, maybe second or even third month, because when you're starting from scratch and you're setting goals and you're really focusing on your priorities, you're setting new habits, right? So before you see any change, before you see any success, it's about consistency in those new habits. We can talk about weight loss, because this is a good one everyone can kind of relate to. If you're looking to get healthier and lose weight, and you're starting from ground zero, say you don't really work out much, you really don't focus on your eating, you don't really know where you are with any of that, right? But you want to lose weight, which is great, fantastic. So let's do that. You have to set a consistent workout schedule, whether that's walking every day, whatever it may be, small goal, right? You have to do some work to figure out what you should be eating, kind of where your calories should be. This is all pre-work, right? You have to figure this out. And then for the first 1 to 3 months, you have to be consistent with that before you notice any changes. And this is where a lot of people fail. This is where a lot of people fall off. They don't trust the process. You might get 1 to 2 months into a goal and you're like, this is not working. Nothing's changing. I'm not seeing anything. You give up. Giving up is very relatable to burning out. When you give up, you're going to go back to, or even worse off, before you started. So you have to trust the process, because if you do, the reward is like no other. So let's say the opposite. Say you trusted the process, and then 6 months, all of a sudden, you're looking through photos, you're looking through things, you're talking to people, you haven't seen someone in a long time, and they're like, wow, you look amazing, your skin looks better, your hair looks better, your clothes are fitting differently, and then you look at old photos, boom, you see the change. And you're like, wow, I didn't realize that this has been happening. You're going through a transformation, but it's because you trust the process. And believe me, when you get to that point, say that 6 or 8 month point, and you see all that and you start to hear all that, that is going to drive you towards your goal even more. that might even drive you towards new goals. So now you're working out consistently, you're eating healthy, you're starting to sleep good, you're starting to feel good. Now you might want to set a new goal. You might want to say, hey, I want to run a 5K. Or, hey, I want to do, there's this class I've been wanting to take. I think I want to take it because it's going to build confidence, right? That's what we mean by trust the process. If you trust the process, the rewards are going to start to come, and it's going to give you clarity to understand what it looks like to work towards a goal correctly. Your season's going to continue to change, and we just have to keep moving forward no matter what season that you're in. Just trust the process and understand that that season is just a season, and do the best job that you can with the season that you're in. And do not get discouraged if you have a goal in the back of your mind that is just not right for the season that you're in, and just wait for the time that is right. Because if you do, you'll be much more successful at that goal during that season. So with that being said, listen guys, just keep moving forward. Let's stay positive. I am going to continue to update you guys on my Leadville training. It's going really well. A couple updates. Next weekend, there's going to be a team of us that I was very fortunate to join. We're actually doing a celebratory kind of run. We're going to be running, I believe, 340 miles from New York to Boston to celebrate the 4th of July, ending the run in Boston on the 4th of July. It's going to be a pretty amazing experience. Pretty excited for that. This also aligns perfectly with my Leadville training. I have a lot of work travel coming up, so we talked about the goal is not perfection, but it's consistency. I'm definitely going to have to alter some of my training this summer as I have a few work trips coming up as well, but you just stay positive and you just keep moving forward and you work towards those goals, and you'll feel amazing at the end. So with that being said, thanks for listening to the Chef Triathlete Podcast. If today's episode helped you out, please share it with someone who needs this reminder. Until next time, keep fueling your body, strengthening your mind, and living with a purpose.